1950s. Wow. 1960s. Get that hand up high in church. 1970s. That's the decade right there. All right. 1980s. We got 80s representing tonight. 1990s. Look at this. We got the 90s represent. 2000s here. First decade of the 2000s. Yeah, we got some 2000s up in here. Oh, you're the 70s. What are you talking about? Okay. And the last generation, the 2010s, we got 3 of them back in the nursery, praise be to God. When you think about that, how many churches on a Sunday night in April can say they got representation? That's a lot of decades. 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, 2010s. 9 decades represented here tonight on a Sunday night. That's pretty amazing when you think about it. Yeah, Jason, that does deserve a hand clap offer. That is pretty amazing stuff. Praise be to God. And it is wonderful what the Lord is doing, and I'm excited for what God's going to do the rest of this year, and should he tarry right on into the new year when it gets here. But to God be the glory. Tonight, the title of tonight's message is Understanding the Will of God, Part 2, or Part 2, or Part 2 for those of you in the English language. Okay, here tonight because we had Part 1 this morning, and so we're going to get into the will of God, and we're going to talk about tonight, I believe, the most powerful prayer meeting, even more powerful than the upper room because Jesus is participating in this prayer meeting, is in the Garden of Gethsemane. We're going to talk about tonight a powerful prayer of conversation between a father and his only son. We're going to talk about what was on Jesus' mind as he is praying shortly before he is taken captive and hung on a cross. I know Resurrection Week was 2 weeks ago, but that doesn't matter. We can talk about Resurrection Week all year round, right, church? Okay, and so to God be the glory. But it's real important. I got thinking this week as I was preparing for this message, because originally Dorsey Ross was supposed to get in last night, and his father is having some medical concerns, and so they're not here. His father's 82 years old, and Dorsey's not driving anymore, so we're going to have to reschedule. So I began to pray for this message on Tuesday night when the final decision to reschedule took place. But I began to say, Lord, how can we truly understand your will without the prayer in the garden? With how serious it is and how valued it is, not just for us, but even for Christ himself. How much value he took in knowing and following and obeying the will of his Father. And so tonight we're going to take a trip to the Garden of Gethsemane. We're going to take a trip and we're going to understand what was happening at that point, and to know that even Jesus has to submit to the will of his Father. We have to submit too. And that's what this morning was all about, and understanding the end of the Sermon on the Mount and understanding the will of our Father in heaven. If you guys would be so kind as to stand with me for the reading of God's Word from Matthew 26 tonight. Matthew is the first book of the New Testament there, if you're looking for it. If you don't have a Bible or you can't find it, just listen with your ears. Matthew chapter 26, and we're going to be reading 11 verses actually tonight, verses 36 to 26 here tonight. Matthew 26, 36 from the New King James Version of the Bible. Then Jesus came with them to a place called Gethsemane and said to the disciples, "Sit here while I go and pray over there." And he took with him Peter and the 2 sons of Zebedee, and he began to be sorrowful and deeply distressed. Then he said to them, "My soul is exceedingly sorrowful, even to death. Stay here and watch with me." He went a little further and fell on his face and prayed, saying, "O my Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, not as I will, but as you will." Then he came to the disciples and found them sleeping, and said to Peter, "What? Could you not watch with me 1 hour? Watch and pray, lest you enter into temptation. The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak. Again, a second time he went away and prayed, saying, O my Father, if this cup cannot pass away from me unless I drink it, your will be done. And he came and found them asleep again, for their eyes were heavy. So he left them, went away again and prayed the third time, saying the same words. Then he came to his disciples and said to them, Are you still sleeping and resting? Behold, the hour is at hand, and the Son of Man is being betrayed into the hands of sinners. Rise, let us be going. See, my betrayer is at hand. May the Lord add a blessing to the reading of his word. You may be seated. Church, this morning we got serious. Tonight we're going to get serious. Prayer is huge. But more so than prayer tonight, it's the will of the Father. It's the will of the Father. And what God desires. I don't know about you, but whatever the Father does, or whatever the Father says, I want to do. I want to finish his will. I want to be part of that. I don't want to go off on a rabbit trail. I had one compliment today. It was great with someone that was visiting from down in the Biddeford area that was here this morning. And he said to me, for the first time in as many years as he can remember, there wasn't a rabbit trail. I said, wow, thank you. Because most pastors, they'll take you on a rabbit trail. You're supposed to be here. Next thing you know, you're way back somewhere else, and you're there for a half hour wondering, where is this going? Okay, but I thought that was a pretty good compliment, and I told him that. But here's the thing, church. Tonight, let's not go on a rabbit trail. If you're a dreamer, if you easily daydream, if you easily drift off, ask God to help you to stay focused tonight, to stay in the Word tonight, to stay in touch with God, and God will help you because God the Father wants you to understand his will. He wants you to understand. And tonight we're going to look at the example that Jesus set and the fact that Jesus was about his Father's business. Jesus was about obeying his Father's will and to see his will carried out. What happens when in the military when a soldier does not carry out his command or his order? Yeah, I mean, it's not good. They don't come and do a nice hooray. There's a problem. And I love the little puppet show that the Lord family used to do when it was many of the kids still in the family, and they used to do the little army play, and they used to do the command and send out the, go listen to the commands and go be obedient, follow the command, you're a soldier, go forward, that type of thing. Well, I think this morning we got the command, the Sermon on the Mount, and now it's time to do it. But here tonight to do it, let's look at the example that Jesus set. Because it's not going to be easy. Okay, it's not. Jesus himself, obviously he was without sin, he was without blemish, he was perfect Son of God, perfect man, okay? However, Jesus still had to say, not my will, but yours be done. Fully submitted to his Father's will, fully surrendered to the call. And I want you guys to know, you guys are not, I'm not the one out barking out orders and you guys just listen to me. I don't want anybody to think I'm brainwashing you or anybody to think that I'm That's not what it's about. We're about our Father's business. We're unified in that. That's so important to us. It's not. I'm not some dictator. We're not a cult. I'm not any greater than any of you out there. Okay, we're on the same page. We're on God's team. Amen. We're in His army, and we're marching on. And it's the Father who's given us His will, and that He wants to see that will. And you know what, guys? We're responsible for the River Valley. God has placed us responsible. We're not responsible for Lewiston and Auburn. Let Pastor Kugel take care of that. We're not responsible for Portland. We're not responsible for Maryland. We are responsible for the River Valley. This is our place where God has called us. Okay, and some of you I know live out briefly, barely outside of the River Valley, down in Jay. We don't want to forget Jay, even though that's where Whit lives. But we want to understand that this is where God has called us. This is where we need to take ownership and stewardship of the will and to carry out His will in a God-fearing, loving fashion, but use Christ's example to do that. But it's not going to be easy. It was very difficult. Matter of fact, the disciples, 3 of them, fell asleep during the most difficult of times as the hour was at hand. And they did not have the discipline to even stay awake an hour. What's our discipline like? What's our prayer life like? We've heard sermons. We've had Sunday school classes. We've had VBSs. That's why I encouraged the kiddos this morning in Kid Time to develop a time to pray. And young people, you can pray this week. You don't have to go to school. This is a great time to start. Get alone with God. Get in your prayer closet. You know, if that means you have to put on your Christian music and pray, because I know young people like to crank it up, that's fine with me. I don't have a problem. But get alone with God. You know, it's so important, because if not, we can be asleep when God wants us to fulfill his will. I don't know about you. This is not a time to be sleeping spiritually in the River Valley. We got difficult things at hand. Talk about this mill closing up. Our schools are in big-time limbo because it's so expensive, and now you get Dixfield's furious because of merging with Mount Valley and Andover, and they're broke off of STAD 44. I mean, there are so many things going across the River Valley. There's a lot of turmoil. There's problems. There's dissension. The town of Peru just threw out 4 of the 5 of their selectmen. There are things like this complete chaos that's happening all around our area. We just had a major drug bust. We just had families that we know very well from Sports Mega Camp and VBS that were arrested from stealing over $80,000 from an 80-year-old lady. That was breaking news Friday. There are so many things going on all around us. We don't have time to be asleep. We have to be alert. But let me just say, it can be real easy to miss the will of God and understand the will of God and be just like Peter, James, and John when they were catching the snooze at the most crucial time as the hour was at hand. Our hour's at hand for such a time as this. And you know what, church? The town of Rumford is taking notice of what God's doing here. They're calling us for help. They're calling on us to reach out and help the communities, reach out and help families. They're calling on us when there's no other place to go. There's no money to be found. There's no volunteers to be found. I tell you what, you want to know why? Because God's going forth and people see something in us. People say the government has no use for the church. I don't believe that. I believe if the church will be the church, then the government will say, we want your help. I believe that with all my heart. We're seeing that right here. If you don't believe me, wait till July 4th. When you go to the game section of the July 4th parade, you're going to think you're at Praise Assembly of God. You're going to see the shirt. We're going to have our shirts on, and they're going to think Praise Assembly is taking over the game section at the 4th of July. But that's just one little bit of evidence of the responsibility God's entrusted us here in the River Valley. Okay, but let's break down these verses. Let's bring in the garden. Let's bring in where the hour is at hand. Let's bring in, as resurrection with the triumphal entry has already happened. Next year, 2014, should the Lord tarry, Vince and I have already been talking. We're going to be all over Resurrection Week. You guys are going to think you've been on a plane and going on vacation. We're going to be in one spot. We're going to be all, because there is so much to Resurrection Week. I mean, it's amazing how many things went on during those 7 days. But here, church, this is after Jesus predicts Peter's denial. This is after Judas agrees to betray Jesus. This is after the Passover. This is after the institution of the Last Supper. And the hour is now at hand when Jesus is going to be turned over to his accusers. He's arrested. But before that happens, he has a prayer. He gets alone with God. And we're going to look at those 11 verses here tonight. Verse 36 of Matthew 26. Then Jesus, this is after he predicted Peter's denial. Then Jesus came with them, Peter, James, and John, a place called Gethsemane, and said to the disciples, sit here while I go and pray over there. Church, people ask me all the time, Pastor, where do you get all this energy for prayer? Where do you get all this energy for having people pray? The Bible. That's the book for me. Jesus, he was instituting prayer meetings all the time. This is just one of many. Jesus, he knew the seriousness at hand, and he knew it was time to pray. He knew it was time to get serious with God. He knew it was time to get alone with God. He knew it was time to go to the next level with God. Which is why, I encourage folks as much as I can to come to prayer meeting, to have personal prayer time in your prayer closets. Because I value it. I understand the importance of it. For the hour is at hand, and that is the will of God. Church, that is the will of God, that we be a praying church, that we be a praying people. Jesus said, my house will not be a den of thieves, but my Father's house will be a house of prayer. We try to follow the example of Christ and His Word as much as we can. Why? Because that's His will. That's His will, church. It is His will that we be a praying people. But here Jesus said, I'll sit here while I go and pray over there. Now notice Jesus did not have them come with Him. That doesn't mean He did not expect them to pray. He expected them to participate. There are times, church, that you will not be able to be with me. Now, God's omnipresent, but there are times in which you're going to have to pray. There are times in which, you know what, I may be over praying with someone over there, and does that mean prayer meeting's over? I hope not. We have to get serious and understand the value and the importance of prayer. Here Jesus said, hey, disciples, I'm going over here to pray. You stay here. Verse 37, and Jesus took with Him Peter and the two sons of Zebedee, James and John, and He began to be sorrowful and deeply distressed. Church, the Bible says that we are to cry out for the children. We are to cry out for a land that is decaying. Well, I don't know about you, but we have children growing up in horrific homes. We have children without parents today. We have children addicted to drugs today. We have children today that are in abusive homes, and social services are so backed up they can't get to them fast enough. By the time they get to a situation, the family's sober again and everything looks hunky-dory. We have, you would think you're in a World War II zone with some things that are going on in people's homes. If you don't believe me, just venture down to the local elementary school. Just stay out in the parking lot and listen to the lingo. And I'm thinking, if this is going on in a public school parking lot, I wonder what's going on in the home. Next thing you know, then I get a call to come into a situation, to help a situation in the home. But there are so many things going on. But we need to be sorrowful for what's happening now and to weep before God for what's happening all around us. It is not God's will to see that our population is 68% single mothers and children. It is God's will that first comes love, then comes marriage, then comes the baby and the baby carriage. That is God's will. That's His design for a family. Now, I realize that we have 68%, but God's going to take this, but we can certainly train our children and pray that our children will have that value, have that desire to fulfill God's will, and go forward and say, you know what, we're going to fix that, where our children aren't going to make the same blunders that we made, and that we're going to see them follow the will of God. But we can't do that unless we're a praying people, because society says otherwise nowadays. Society says you can do whatever you want. Oh, if you make a mistake, like the president, he said, well, if my daughters make a mistake, they can go and have an abortion. We have a family planning center right here on Franklin Street, and the taxpayer dollars going to that. It's not only your local Rumford taxpayer dollars, but your state of Maine taxpayer dollars going to that type of thing. But it is a time, and Jesus, as He was thinking about all that was going on, as he knows His time is about to expire, and His first mission is about to be finished, which is to die on the cross for the sins of everyone. He is filled with sorrow. He is deeply distressed. And church, it is the will of God, and it was the will of God that Jesus died on the cross for our sins to pay for our punishment. Praise be to God. We had the Lord's Supper this morning. We certainly want to praise God for that. But I believe it is God's will for His righteous. Now, we're not perfect people, but we're His righteous people. We're without spot or wrinkle because we believe in Jesus, to begin to be sorrowful and distressed for the situation that's at hand. Who's going to care for these kids, these teens, the 68% single parents and children, if not the church? Church, and this is vital, and it is the will of God that we become this way. It is the will of God that we weep. It is the will of God that we go forward. It was the will of God for Jesus to have this prayer in the garden 2,000 years ago. And Jesus, He was lamenting before His Father. And then we're going to get real serious now. Verse 38. And then Jesus said to them, His disciples, my soul is exceedingly sorrowful, even to death. Stay here and watch with me. Now, church, Jesus, of course, wanted his disciples to follow his example. And I want to follow the Lord's example. But I know, as pastor of this church, that I need to set the example. You will never, ever hear me ask you to do something that I have not done or am not willing to do myself. Because that's to be a hypocrite. If I encourage folks to come to prayer meeting and wasn't here, there'd be a problem. If I encourage folks to come to Sunday school but wasn't here, there would be a problem. If I encourage folks to go and evangelize and didn't do that myself, there would be a problem. And here Jesus knew that he needed to be seen by his disciples at this last hour so that they could understand the will of his Father. In church, we need to pattern our life after this example of Christ in the Garden of Gethsemane, because there was so much happening here. There was so much that was taking place. Jesus not only was praying to his Father to see his Father's will fulfilled, but Jesus was also taking his disciples to school. He was setting an example. He was teaching them with the very last moments of his life of freedom before he was arrested and went to the cross. But Jesus, he said to them, again, verse 38, my soul is exceedingly sorrowful, even to death. Church, I believe the reason God has called Mary and I to the River Valley of Maine is to be part of his solution to see this spiritual cloud move over the river valley. I believe that's my purpose in life. I believe that's my role. I believe that's what God has asked us to do. And I believe beyond a shadow of a doubt that if it costs me my life, I'm willing to pay that price. I really do. William Wilberforce, I shared this illustration a couple months ago. But when he was shortly before he died, slavery was abolished in the mother country of Great Britain. Matter of fact, 3 days after it was abolished, he died. But one of his last paragraphs he said was that my calling the last 20 years was simply to see slavery abolished in England. I can stand in this pulpit today and let you know without a shadow of a doubt that if it costs me my life, I want to see God's will fulfilled here in the River Valley, and I want to be a part of it. That's the Jesus. He wanted his disciples to be a part of the final hour, but they were catching the snooze. They were missing the boat. Even one of the 12, had just agreed to betray Jesus, and he was about to be kissed by the betrayer. And all this is going on. But many Christians in our area are completely oblivious. I was down at the health and safety meeting over right next door here at River Valley Health. And the police officers, local, county, and state were all saying, no one has any idea what's going on around here. Completely oblivious, and we can't stay on top of it. There's not enough of us to handle the situations that are going on in people's homes. People are blaming the police already. I've been reading the editorials about how in the world is crack cocaine coming into the River Valley. They can't stay on top of it. Then people are all upset because of the underage parties that are going on and the parents that are buying the booze even for their kids, and there's already the big plans. Prom is less than a month away, and so they're already planning all that, and the police are getting a third degree, but there's only a certain amount of funding and a certain amount of police. We need to see hearts and minds change in the River Valley before it's too late. I know the police get a bad rap. There's not enough of them that can stay on top of what's taking place in our homes and in our streets. But I tell you what, I know it's God's will to move forth through this river valley like a mighty rushing wind and start to change the hearts of people from the inside out. That's how it's going to happen. We need a great awakening, and I believe it's the will of God to bring one. But we need to be a praying people. We need to follow the Christ-like example here and be awake, because many of us You may not be physically asleep, but you're spiritually completely oblivious to what's going on. Completely oblivious to the fact that we have 7 sex offenders right here. And you know what? Wednesday night, one of them walked in here completely intoxicated. We had over 20 kids sitting around here running around. Crazy. And there I am trying to get him under control. And I remember sharing, one came in here. Yeah, they came in intoxicated, and you don't know what they're going to do. We better take the blinders off, wake up and smell the Folgers, because that's the time we're living in. And these guys have enough gall to walk right on in here. And they're abusive, vulgar, language going crazy. I'm trying to calm. He's looking for me, frantic. Scared to death he's going to die or do himself in, one of the two. Okay, but here's the thing. This is the real deal. But you know what? Many Christians are missing it, just like the disciples. We're missing that the final hour was at hand. Literally, the final hour was at hand. The last hour of freedom for Christ was right here. What did he do with it? He prayed. He prayed to his Father. And now we're going to get serious about what he prayed. Verse number 39. He went a little further and fell on his face, prostrate. One translation has, Amplified has, I believe it's the Amplified that has in parentheses, but fell on his face and prayed, saying, "Oh, my Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, not as I will, but as you will." Wow. The prayer, the specific prayer of our Lord and our Savior. In this moment, the final hour, what unselfishness. If it is possible. Father, may this cup pass from me, not my will, but your will be done. What unselfishness. Wow. Completely committed to the cause in which he was born to do, which was to die. Completely committed to his Father's business. You can have this morning's message down pat. You can even memorize the Sermon on the Mount. The B-Leaguers, they had to memorize the Sermon on the Mount, didn't you guys? Yeah. Out of Matthew, you had to memorize that Sermon on the Mount. Praise be to God. But you can memorize it. You can know it. You can hear it 1,000 times a day. But if we don't do it, if we don't take ownership, if we're not committed to that, we have nothing. Amen. Nothing. And nothing from nothing leaves nothing. Okay, and here, church, the disciples, they had the Sermon on the Mount. They had everything. But the only one that seemed to remember, to understand the will of God the Father, was Jesus Christ. He was committed to it. And you know what I like? You know what I'm encouraged by? Just like the testimony I shared earlier, that more and more and more here at Praise are getting on board. I want to be committed to the cause. I want to be committed. I want to be committed. I want to be there. Quite frankly, there's nothing as important to doing the will of God and honoring and obeying that and being faithful to that. There are some things that, whether it's relationships, sports, shopping, all that kind of stuff, nothing is more important than following and obeying the will of our Father. Peter was a married man. But Jesus told him to drop his net, and Peter obeyed, and he followed Jesus for 3 years, but then fell asleep at the final hour. What good would it do, church, if you were to run the 50-yard dash? I used to love, now they call it meters. I forget what it is in meters. But in my day, it was 50-yard dash. That is 150 feet for those of you that need the feet. 3 feet a yard. Okay, 50-yard dash. What good would it be? Pretend this stage is the 50-yard dash. Okay, and here's the starting gate. And you're down in position, and you're waiting for the official to blow the whistle or shoot the little toy gun, whatever they use. And you see the end. You know, you see the trophies over there. You see the ribbons that you could win, and you're ready to roll. And you hear the whistle blow, and you take off out of the gate, and you are running as fast as you can. I used to love the short races. Endurance stuff, I was no good, but the short races I could do. You know, and here we are, 50 yards, and you're now at the 40-yard mark, and you just say, I think I'll just stop here and catch a snooze. You know what? A lot of times that's what we do. We get the instruction. We know what we're to do. We know the destination's at hand. We see that. We hear that. The gun is shot. We get out of the gate, great. And then we just get slower and slower and slower. And then by the time we get toward the end, the final yard or two, and just sit down and go to sleep. Are you going to get a trophy? You're going to get a ribbon? No, instead you're going to get laughed at. Because all you had was a yard, all you had was 3 more feet to go. Here is exactly what Peter, James, and John did. They got out of the gate, but they fell asleep at the last hour. But praise God that Jesus didn't. Praise God that He's a loving, forgiving God that'll say, you know what, get up and run. Church, we need to get up and run. And many of us, we're deciding, no, we're going to do that. Look at the testimonies heard here tonight of God's perseverance that He's building in us, the hope that He's giving us. One was saying to me earlier, Pastor, I don't know what it is, but every time I come in here, I just want to come back. Do I have to go home? Can I just stay? You know, because the presence of God and the fact that He's building our morale, He's building our hope, He's building our perseverance, He's building our character, because He's here. He's here, church, and this is His house, and He's going forwards, and that's exciting, and we're committed to the call. So I just praise God for you. But as we say, don't worry. As soon as we say that, you know what, we're going to be committed to the cause. Look at the relationships God is giving us to share the Father's will with, to share the will of God. We talked about in Sunday school this morning. In the temporary coolest class in Sunday school, we were talking about someone who brought up a relationship of a good friend who was in a fornication relationship. Well, God, I'm an adult now. You know that song and dance that we've heard a lot. But God still has the same standard whether you're a teenager or a 60-year-old. You know, fornication's fornication. I don't care if you've been married 10 times; it doesn't matter. Okay, to God. But I remember we talked about the fact that we just have to stand up and make a stand for His Word and understand His Word. And we have to do the same thing for His will. And what is His will? His will is that we desire and be a holy people. That we desire to be the salt and light of the world. Just as was talked about this morning from the Sermon on the Mount. We desire to see and be hearers and doers of the law and the Word of God and the commandments of Jesus. All those things, it's the will of God that we follow. Because that's where the change is going to take place. As I look out at some of you, I've seen God do amazing, wonderful change. You guys aren't the same people. Faces, just despair. It's almost like you just took a mask and just took your hands and just peeled off a mask. If we could do before and after pictures, it would be amazing what God is doing in people's lives. Some of you are just starting that new walk. Praise be to God. You got to start somewhere. Okay? You got to start somewhere, you know. And others of you are just continuing to mature. But as we fulfill the Father's will, may we never forget where we came from. Never forget. We're a poor, wretched sinner too. We were ugly too. But God, because of His grace, He got a hold of us and cleaned us up a little bit, didn't He? You know, I don't understand why we forget that. You know, why we forget who we were. Like we were God's gift to the world. We had our issues too. God met us, cleaned us up, and used us for His glory, because that's His will. That's the good news. That's the power of the gospel. That's what the Lord desires to do. But you can't do that. You can't help somebody if one's not going to step up and defend the will of God. Verse number 40. At the end of verse 39. Not as I will, but as you will. You know what? Sometimes serving Christ is tiring. But it's not my will, Father, it's yours. That means I have to stay an extra 15 minutes and talk to someone and get teased at because I'm still here long after people left. I know. You still here, Pat? Yeah, I'm still here. Sharing the good news. Building somebody's faith. Mary and I left last Saturday night, and there's a homeless man out here in the gazebo after prayer meeting. But you know, not my will, Father, but yours. Be done for such a time as this. For such a time as this. Verse 40, then he, referring to Jesus, came to his disciples after he prayed that. And what did he find them doing? Praying? Hallelujah! No, that's not what he found them doing. He found them sleeping and said to Peter, and notice he called out Peter. Peter by name. Notice here in Matthew's account, it's Peter. We don't even get James and John, just the sons of Zebedee. But he calls out Peter and says, what? Could you not even watch with me 1 hour? 1 hour. Could you not even watch 1 hour? Wow. Found them asleep. It always, I'll be honest with you, it bothers me sometimes when I'm preaching and people are asleep. Anytime you hear me say it's not a time to catch a snooze, that means I found somebody asleep. Hallelujah. Wake themselves up. Church, but every time I think, Lord, that's exactly what happened in the final hour. You know what, church? We can't be asleep. I'm not talking about little kiddos. I used to sleep too. I'm not worried about them. I used to sleep every Sunday night when I was little Liz's age too. Those folks would get happy. Dad would pick us up at 1 o'clock in the morning. And on a school night too. They'd get happy. We were just praising God. And I remember those days and would just fall asleep on the floor. But as adults and teens, we certainly know the hour is at hand for us. Could you not even watch with me 1 hour? Verse 41, watch and pray, lest you enter into temptation. Jesus here tells us the consequences that if we don't pray as a body, as an individual, we have a big bullseye on our chest. And Satan's coming after you. If you want temptation to flee, well, become a person of prayer. Temptation is not from God. And Jesus here makes it very, very clear. People say to me, Pastor, I keep seeming to be making the same mistakes over and over and over again. Well, you want to know why? Because you got a bullseye on your chest and you need to pray. How'd you know I wasn't praying? Well, the Bible. Because I know Jesus means business. If he wasn't going to protect, if he wasn't going to build up, if he wasn't going to exhort through a time of prayer, Jesus would not have told the disciples to pray. Jesus would not have told them to watch and pray lest you enter into temptation. The spirit is indeed willing, but the flesh is weak. You can have all the best intentions in the world. Great intentions. That's wonderful. But intentions aren't getting you anywhere. Saying in the South is, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Intentions ain't getting you anywhere. We got to do it. We got to be the real deal. And be committed to that. And let God speak to us. And speak to our hearts. And God is speaking through prayer. God is building us up. God is leading us and guiding us. And that's the will of our Father. You say, Pastor, how do you know? Because Jesus wouldn't have been taking time to tell them that in the final hour. Church, he didn't have a lot of time. He didn't have time to talk about a game or talk about, hey, Peter, how's your wife doing? That's not what he was doing. Jesus had to get serious and explain to them what the will of his Father. He just told them, Father, not mine. Just told God, not my will, but your will. And now he's teaching Peter, James, and John of what's taking place and what's happening and what's going forward. So it is the will of God that we be a praying people. Jesus did not want his disciples to fall into temptation. Jesus did not want his disciples to go the wrong way. But they weren't praying people. You say, Pastor, how do you know? Well, here it is. Spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. Verse 42, and again a second time he went away, and he prayed, saying, O my Father, if this cup cannot pass away from me, unless I drink it, your will be done. Prays a similar prayer. Father, not mine, but yours. I'm about your business. I'm your humble servant. I'm submissive. Going to be obedient, even in the final hour. But then verse 43 is gut-wrenching. And he came and found them asleep again, for their eyes were heavy. They weren't just casually asleep. They were in a deep sleep. Can you imagine this? Jesus had already rebuked them one time. And Jesus goes away and prays and comes back. And this time they're in a deep sleep. So I'm thinking, Lord, that must have been how I feel when I feel like, sometimes I'll preach a powerful message, a God-inspired, God-anointed message, and it just seemed like nothing happens. But here, Jesus had just rebuked his disciples, especially Peter, because he knew that James and John would be following his example. He had just rebuked them, and here he is, and he comes back after praying again, and they're catching a snooze, and this time, a heavy snooze. They were out. Just gone. Wow. The final hour. Jesus had to be broken by that. I've spent 3 years with you. I've poured out my life. I've explained to you what's going on, and I just rebuked you. It's like parents when you rebuke your child, and 5 minutes later they're doing it again. Wow! Here is the final hour. Here is the last straw. Here's where Jesus is about to be arrested, and he comes back and he finds them asleep again, for their eyes were heavy. Church, the will of God is that we be obedient without needing to be rebuked. That we be obedient because we take God's word at his instruction. We don't have to be convinced. I pray not now. We look at the word and say, wow, this is amazing. You don't have to. Notice Jesus here in this prayer is not asking for money. He's not asking for material things. He's asking for them to pray. And prayer is free. He's asking them to, in the final hour, to seek the Father. He's asking them to pray similarly. Father, not my will, but your will be done. That's not what they were doing. They were not understanding what was taking place, which had to be breaking the Lord. You say, Pastor, well, they were just confused. Well, if they had been praying, maybe they wouldn't have been. If you're out there and if you're confused in life, spend time with God. God has a way of answering the mysterious things of life, but you got to spend time with them. Could you imagine if Mary and I did not talk? It would be, that's right, Tyler, that's right. There'd be a problem. Okay, communication's a big problem in many marriages today. But if we did not talk at all, we wouldn't get anywhere. I wouldn't know what she wanted, or if I was supposed to bring a gallon of milk home for dinner. Well, I didn't know that. Well, whatever, because we didn't talk. Whatever the case is, here, if we simply talk to God and seek his will and be a part of fulfilling his will, as we learned this morning, the mysterious things of life, the gray of life will become black and white. And you're not going to fall into temptation. Temptation can be a sports game. Temptation can be food. It can be alcohol. It can be a gambling addiction. Temptation can be given into peer pressure. Temptation can be a big loan. Like, it's mighty tempting. You see 3.5% loan. You know, the district, I mean, that's mighty tempting. Temptation can be a lot of things. But you got to look at God's word and say, God, what's your will? Temptation here was going to catch up with the disciples. But we'll get to that in a second. And he came and found them asleep again, for their eyes were heavy. A deep sleep, verse 43 tells us. Verse 44, so Jesus left them, went away again, and prayed a third time, saying the same words. You know what? Sometimes we need to pray similar prayers. And we need to chase after God. And we need to yield. And as we say things to the Lord, such as, Father, not my will, but your will be done. Lord, I don't have to worry about tomorrow, for today has enough concern. Or whatever verses you're quoting, or whatever things you're quoting. Here Jesus says the same thing the third time. Not my will, but yours be done. If this cup cannot pass from me, I'll drink of it. I'll suffer. I'll die. Not my will, but yours be done. And then verse 45. Verse 43 was gut-wrenching enough. Verse 45 is just double gut-wrenching. Then he came to his disciples and said to them, are you still sleeping and resting? Wow. Wow. Church, I don't want to be the dead church. Do you want to be the church at Sardis? Anybody here want to be that? I don't want to be that. I want to be Philadelphia. I want to be faithful. Okay, but here, are you still sleeping and resting? Think about this, those of you that have kids. Are you still in your room watching and playing video games when I told you to get ready? When I told you to comb your hair or brush your teeth? Or have you not gone to your... Why is this toothbrush still dry? What have you been doing in here the last half hour? You don't do that, do you, Whip? Fixing that hair? What have you been doing? Are you asleep? Are you what is going on? What is taking place? Here Jesus comes back a third time and says, are you still sleeping and resting when I told you to pray? Wow. Wow. Are you still sleeping and resting? Behold, the hour is at hand. What hour? The hour of his arrest. The last hour of his freedom. The most crucial time in the disciples' 3 years with Jesus was right here, and they were asleep and being disobedient, not fulfilling the Father's will. Our hour is at hand, and what are we going to do? You know what? I'm excited because folks are responding to that by saying, I'm going to be about my Father's business. I'm going to look at my calendar. I'm going to get on my knees. I'm going to pray. I'm going to make some changes. I'm going to, change some of my habits so that I we have folks, adults sleeping 10, 12 hours a day. Hello? Half a day? Half a day? Come on. Church, 12 hours a day, that's how much a 2-year-old is supposed to sleep. An average adult is 6 to 8 hours. Is what we're supposed to sleep for healthy living. 12 hours a day. You know what, church? You want to know why that person is so sluggish? Because they're getting too much sleep. Your body can't have that much. You're going to be depressed. You're going to have a low morale. Your body's going to need to be alert, more alert than just knocked out all the time. Wow. But here, in the most crucial time, the disciples were asleep. In 2013, in the most crucial time in the history of the River Valley, what will we be doing? What will we be doing, church? Here, Jesus, are you still sleeping and resting? Behold, the hour is at hand, and the Son of Man is being betrayed into the hands of sinners. Church, what's happening now? What's happening now is that Satan is having a field day out here. A field day in our schools, our field day in our apartment buildings, a field day everywhere you look. Well, Church, I used to tell folks all the time, I'm going to teach school for 2 years, but God did not call me up here to teach school. God called me up here to minister the gospel. I'm not a pastor for a job. I'm a pastor because God's asked me to do it. You know what, church? God's called us here too. And we have to look at our schedule book and say, okay, what is important? I have the same conversation with our local pastors. They look at what's happening here and they think it just happened like that. So no, we had 6 people out in the sticks. That's what we had. I had to work too, but I wasn't going to work forever. I remember sharing business meeting after business. I'm working no more than 2 years. I'm trusting God that I won't have to teach school after 2 years. And sure enough, that happened. Because I knew God didn't call me. I could teach back in Maryland, make $75,000. And by now, after 10 years, I'd be making over $100,000. That's how much teachers with tenure in 10 years get paid if they're good teachers. That's a good chunk of change. That's not what God's calling me to do. And church, we have to look at that and realize what's happening and what's taking place to make sure that the will of God is fulfilled and that it goes forward. And we all have a role. We're going to sing harmony where we all have a part. But we have to be committed to that. Here, Jesus said, behold, the hour is at hand. The Son of Man is being betrayed into the hands of sinners. But Jesus didn't have any more time to do any more teaching. He didn't have any more time to give them a 4th or 5th chance. He simply says in verse 46, rise, let us be going. See, my betrayer is at hand. We know Judas is about to kiss him. Church, we can't keep asking for a delay. How many of you love to hit the snooze button every morning? Give you 9 minutes. 9 more minutes. Beep. Bush. 9 minutes. Beep. That thing's going off like an hour later. You're still hitting snooze. Okay, but here, notice Jesus didn't give him a 4th chance. He didn't give him a 5th chance. It was time. The betrayer was too late. There was no more time. You can't go pray anymore. You can't. Sorry, you've missed it. Judas is over there hiding in the trees. He's about to kiss me. You've missed your opportunity. It's too late. You know what? There are Christians and churches all around here that are missing the opportunity for various reasons. We're not going to miss the opportunity here. The alarm's going to go off and we're going to get up. We're not going to push snooze. Remember the old saying, you snooze, you lose? Yeah. Well, you know what, church? Think about this. If we're snoozing, that means somebody may be perishing. I know there's evil in this world. I know there's even sex offenders right around us. I don't want to see them perish. They've done some heinous things. I don't even like thinking about it. But I don't want to see them perish. That's not God's will. And you know what? Every one of them that I've ever worked with, and I've worked with about 50 of them, every single one of them were abused themselves. That wasn't God's will. God's will is to bring them life. And I think we've got to be ready for anything here because they're coming in the doors. God's laying on some people's hearts to do some great things. But so many of the others are still living in an evil, sick world. But how do we overcome evil? With good. That's the will of the Father. But if we're asleep, we don't want the sand in the hourglass to go forward. Maybe here tonight you're at the place and this is your first warning, just as Jesus gave the disciples a first warning. Maybe you're here tonight, you're on strike too. And maybe you're here tonight and you just took your 3rd swing and barely tipped it, which in baseball, if you tip it, you're not out. You know, on the 3rd strike, you got to either miss completely or put the ball in play to strike out, you know, and you tipped it, so you're still alive. But you realize, wow, this may be the final warning I get from the Lord. So you've got to stop and ask yourself, is fulfilling the will of God that important to me that I'm willing not to take that chance and fall back asleep? And say, I'll push snooze. I'll get up before it goes off. I'll get up in 4 minutes rather than 9 minutes. I'll get up in 2 minutes. Just 1 more minute. Next thing you know. Beep. Has it been 9 minutes? Has it been 20 minutes? How long is it? It's been an hour. Oh my, I missed the bus. Oh my, whatever happened. But you know what? We don't have to have that happen. We can heed this word tonight. What Jesus was praying in his last hour of freedom. Say, that's not going to happen here, Lord. We're going to pray. We're going to seek your will, your Father's will. We're going to follow your example. We're not going to be asleep. And you know what? If we're alert when it counts the most, can you say revival? Can you say outpouring? Can you say soaking in the Spirit of God? Can you say a closer walk with thee like never before? Can you say, God, not only, because you know what, if God fills every chair in this place and people are getting saved, by the way. People are recommitting to Christ. People are turning things around. But as all that's happening, I really don't, quite frankly, don't care about increasing the membership rolls here. I care about increasing the membership rolls there. So that's what's important. That's what's important. And that was the will. And that is the will of the Lord. It hasn't changed 2,000 years after Jesus prayed in the garden. It's still the will today. But the question is, do we believe the will of God is still for us? Father, thank you for your word here tonight. Lord, your word is sharper than any two-edged sword. And Lord, your word is so